I don't know why I still remember the way her kitchen light hits the floor at 4 p.m. It spills across the tiles like something sacred, warm, soft, quiet. It's the kind of light you don't notice until you're older, or until she walks into it. I hadn't seen her in years. And when I knocked on her door that afternoon, under the excuse of dropping off something her son had left at the library, I didn't expect her to open it barefoot, hair tied back, cardigan slipping slightly off one shoulder like she'd forgotten it was there. She paused. Just a second too long. Then, "You grew up." Her voice was soft, thinner than I remembered. And then she added, with a smile I couldn't quite read, "Too well." She laughed a little after she said it, as if trying to undo it. I smiled, but something in me stayed caught on those words, like a hook behind the ribs. We stood in her hallway for a while, both unsure of how to cross the strange distance between now and back then. Back then, I was a quiet 16-year-old trying too hard to seem older, babysitting her kid on weekends while she came back late, always smelling faintly of rain and rosemary. Now I was here. 24. Taller. Maybe sure on the outside. But not in front of her. Not here. "You can come in if you want," she said finally, stepping back. I wanted to say no, just out of politeness. But I stepped in. Her house still smelled like lemongrass and something older, maybe from the books lining her living room walls. The kind of scent that made you feel like time passed slower inside. She poured tea. Chamomile. I watched her hands, the way they moved like they were always holding something fragile, even when they weren't. "How long has it been?" she asked, sliding the cup across the counter. I shrugged. "Years. Since he turned, what, 11? 12, she said, correcting me gently. "He's 17 now. Out with his dad this week." Her voice dipped slightly on the word dad. I didn't ask. Instead, I looked at her, really looked, and realized she hadn't just gotten older. She'd become quieter. Like someone who had grown used to keeping certain doors closed, even inside herself. The conversation moved slowly. Like we were both walking across a frozen lake, careful where we stepped. I talked more than I meant to, about grad school, side jobs, music I'd been writing. She listened with this stillness that made me nervous, like she could hear what I wasn't saying. At one point, she reached across the table to pick up her mug, and her fingers brushed mine. Barely. But enough. Enough to stay. Neither of us acknowledged it. The silence after that stretched, not uncomfortable, not quite, but thick enough to feel. She looked at me for a moment longer than made sense. Then pushed back her chair. "I should get dinner started," she said, standing. "But stay if you want. I mean, if you're not busy." I nodded. "I've got time." She didn't answer right away. Just stood there, her hand resting on the edge of the chair, thumb lightly tapping against the wood. And then, just before turning, she said, quieter this time, "You really did grow up, too well." This time, she didn't laugh. She just walked into the kitchen, slowly. But she didn't close the door behind her. And I didn't move. She stood at the stove, slicing zucchini like it didn't matter who was behind her. Like we weren't treading something dangerous, soft beneath our feet. I stayed seated at the kitchen island, hands around the mug she gave me. Still warm. Still untouched. "I never liked cooking," she said suddenly, without looking back. "But it's cheaper than therapy." I laughed, quiet, involuntary. And she smiled at the pan, like that was all she'd wanted. "You don't have to stay, you know," she added. "I mean, don't feel like you have to entertain me." "I'm not," I said. I wanted to. The second I said it, I heard it back. The way it sounded. And for a moment she paused, just one beat too long with the knife hovering above the cutting board. "I forget how young you are," she said softly. "I forget how old I'm supposed to be." Her head tilted slightly at that, but she didn't answer. The air changed again, not colder, just denser. Like everything meant more than it was allowed to. I looked around the kitchen. Everything was familiar, but rearranged. A new plant by the window. Fewer photos on the fridge. One wine glass drying near the sink. Not two. Not none. One. Do you still paint? I asked, remembering the canvases that used to crowd her garage. Half-finished women with hollow eyes. Landscapes that bled into sky. She shook her head. Stopped a few years ago. Why? She scraped vegetables into the pan. Life got too loud. That answer sat wrong with me, or maybe too right. She wasn't loud. She never had been. Not when I was 16. Not now. Her silence was the kind that made you want to listen harder. She handed me a plate. I took it from her fingers without brushing mine against hers. On purpose. You were always different, she said, leaning on the opposite counter. Even back then. Quiet. Thoughtful. It used to scare me, honestly. Why? Because I saw too much of myself in you. The room stilled. Her eyes were on me, steady, until they weren't. She looked down at her hands instead, fiddling with the ring on her thumb. A ring I didn't remember. I think I stayed with the wrong person too long, she said after a moment. And now I don't really know what to do with the quiet. It was the most she'd said. About anything. I wanted to ask more. I didn't. Instead, I said, the quiet feels okay to me. Her eyes met mine again, and that was the moment. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just two people in a kitchen, holding something invisible between them. She reached for the cupboard above me, too close, her arm brushing my shoulder as she did. Neither of us moved. Not for a second too long. Not for a second short. When she stepped back, her breath caught. Or maybe mine did. Dessert? She asked, without looking up. I nodded. But neither of us moved toward it. And the quiet, the one she didn't know what to do with, filled the room again. It started with the wine. She hadn't meant to open it, I could tell by the way she hesitated before twisting the cork. Like it wasn't planned. Like she was letting something slip. I don't usually drink on weekdays, she said, pouring just a little into each glass. I didn't say anything. I just took the glass, careful not to let our fingers touch this time. She sat across from me on the couch, legs curled up beneath her, cardigan falling slightly off her shoulder again. I looked away too quickly, then regretted it. We talked, about nothing and everything. Old movies. Music that made us cry. Books we'd never finished. And then, for a moment too long, we didn't talk at all. Her eyes lingered on me like they were remembering something I hadn't done yet. Mine did the same. There was a pause, right before it could have happened. Her hand rested on the armrest between us. Mine moved halfway toward it. Then she got up. Too fast. I should. Her voice broke. She cleared it. I should put this away before I drink more. She disappeared into the kitchen, the sound of the wine bottle clinking louder than it should have been. I stayed on the couch, heart thudding like I'd just run somewhere. When she came back, she didn't sit. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. You ever get the feeling something's already a mistake, even before it happens? I didn't answer. Because yeah, I knew that feeling. She looked at me, then down, then away. My ex used to say I was good at pretending things were fine. That I could swallow anything. She laughed, soft and bitter. He was right. I stood. Walked to her slowly, like the floor might crack if I stepped wrong. I'm not asking for anything, I said, almost whispering. I know. She looked up at me then, and I swear the room tilted. Just a little. Her hand brushed against mine again. This time, she didn't move away. And neither did I. It wasn't a kiss. But it was closer than it should have been. Her phone buzzed on the table. We both jumped. She pulled away too fast. Checked it. Didn't answer. Sorry, she muttered. It's just, he checks in sometimes. Husband? I asked, even though I already knew. She nodded. We're separated. Technically. Technically. The word echoed in my chest. She didn't say anything after that. Just stared at the floor like she wished she hadn't said anything at all. I turned to leave. I didn't want to. But I thought maybe that was the right thing to do. She walked me to the door. Slowly. Like we were dragging something invisible between us. "Thanks for the tea," I said. My voice came out too soft. She nodded. But her hand lingered on the doorknob after she opened it. "Don't let this confuse you," she said quietly. "We're just remembering old versions of ourselves." I nodded. But I knew that wasn't true. As I stepped out onto her porch, the air felt colder than it had before. I knew I shouldn't be feeling this, but I was. I didn't mean to come back. I told myself I wouldn't. But I did. 2 days later, I stood on her porch again, hands in my pockets, debating whether to knock. She opened the door before I could. "You always do that," she said, not smiling. "Stand there like you're not sure." "I wasn't. I figured." She stepped aside. I went in. No excuse this time. No lost keys, no books, no forgotten items. We didn't talk much. Just the sound of her putting on water for tea, the clink of the kettle, the low hum of whatever was playing on the radio, something jazzy and quiet. She was wearing a loose sweater, sleeves pushed up. Her hair was down today. She looked softer, but somehow further away. I stood near the kitchen doorway, not moving. She moved around me like I was furniture. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Fine." Silence. "I just wanted to see you," I said. That made her pause. She turned then, slowly. Her eyes met mine. Something flickered. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said. "Not to someone like me." "Why not?" She laughed just once. "Because I've already made enough mistakes in this house. I don't need another one." That landed harder than I expected. "I'm not a mistake," I said. Voice lower. Sharper than I meant. Her expression cracked. "Just for a second." "I didn't say you were." "You just did." The kettle whined behind her, but neither of us moved. "You think I don't feel this too?" she whispered. "You think I haven't been trying to hold it down since the second you walked through that door again?" Her voice shook at the edges. Her hands were tight around the counter. "I look at you," she continued, "and it's like I'm walking into a memory I never gave myself permission to want." I stepped closer. "Then want it," I said. She turned fast, too fast, like she needed space just to breathe. "I'm twice divorced," she said, voice rising. "I have a son barely younger than you. I can't be the woman who—" She stopped. Swallowed hard. I moved again. We were too close now. She didn't back away. "You don't scare me," I said. "Well, you scare me," she whispered. "Because you're not pretending. And I don't know what to do with someone who doesn't pretend." The words hung between us. Heavy. Real. Irreversible. Her hand grazed mine as she turned toward the sink, barely, but it stayed. A second too long. Then, barely above a breath. "Don't go." I froze. She didn't look at me. Just stood there, hands still resting beside mine, eyes on the faucet that wasn't running. The room had no air left in it. And I didn't know what to do with that kind of closeness. But I wasn't leaving. Not yet. We didn't kiss. But we were close enough that we didn't need to. Her breath was shallow. Mine was too. And for a second, just one, I thought maybe this was it. The moment that finally tipped everything over. But then she pulled back. Not with panic. Not even fear. Just a quiet retreat. Like she'd remembered something. Something important. "I shouldn't have said that," she murmured, stepping away. Her voice was steadier than it had any right to be. "You meant it," I said. Not accusing. Just knowing. She turned her back to me. "That's the problem." The distance felt colder this time. Sharper. I took a step forward. She didn't move. "You said you're separated," I started carefully. I am. Her tone clipped the air between us. But we're trying again. He moved back in last week. The room shrank around me. My stomach dropped like I just missed a step. You didn't mention that. No, she said, almost too calm. I didn't. Silence. Nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking wall clock. Why? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. She turned around, finally, arms crossed like armor. Her mouth opened, then closed. When she finally spoke, it was soft. Because I didn't think you'd come back if you knew. And I wanted you to come back. There it was. The truth, as clear and devastating as it needed to be. So what was this? I asked. Some last flicker before you settle again? No, she said quickly. God, no. Don't do that. Her voice cracked then. Not loud. Just enough. I didn't plan this, she whispered. I miss being looked at like that. Like I still mattered. My chest tightened. I wanted to hate her. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I understood. I leave next week, I said suddenly. She blinked. What? Grad school. Another city. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make it harder. She laughed, not cruel, not amused. Just broken. So this was never going to be anything, was it? I don't know, I said. But I wanted it to be real. Even if it was just for a moment. She wiped under her eye quickly, trying to make it seem like nothing. I'm not good at this, she said, barely audible. Not anymore. You were good with me, I said. That's the part that hurts. She looked at me then, fully. Raw. Unfiltered. No guard. Just a woman trying to hold two truths that don't fit in the same hand. And I didn't touch her. I didn't move. We just stood there. Her near the doorway. Me near the place I used to leave his drawings out to dry. Should I go? I asked. She didn't answer. Didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. She just stood there. And let the silence speak. She didn't answer. Not when I asked if I should go. And I didn't press. But I stayed. Just stood there, breathing in the quiet, the weight, the closeness that had nowhere to land anymore. She finally moved, slowly, walking past me toward the living room. She didn't ask me to follow. I did anyway. She sat on the edge of the couch like she wasn't sure she belonged there. Like everything in this house had shifted a few inches to the left. I haven't told him, she said, not looking at me. About you. About anything. You don't owe him that, I said. Don't I? She murmured. He's still my husband. On paper. In pieces. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just tired honesty. I sat across from her. Not beside her. Because if I sat too close, I might not be able to leave. I want you, I said. I didn't mean to. But I did. And once it was out there, it felt irreversible. Her eyes closed. Just for a second. A flinch. Like the truth hit something soft inside her. I want you too, she whispered. But I don't know how this can work. I don't even know who I am in this. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, trying to find stillness. Then let's not make it something it's not, I said. Let's just let it be what it is. Messy. Real. Ours. She looked at me then, really looked, and for once, didn't look away. You're so young, she said, voice barely holding steady. You say things like that because you still believe people can live in moments without consequence. And you say things like that because you've stopped believing they can. I shot back. The silence that followed didn't cool anything. It only made the heat worse. I stood. Walked to the window. Light from the street lamp outside stretched across her floor like a long arm reaching in. I'm not asking you to leave him, I said. I'm not asking you to choose me. I need you to be honest with yourself. She didn't answer. Didn't cry. She just looked down at her hands like they were foreign to her. I was alone for so long, I forgot what wanting someone felt like, she said finally. And now that I remember, I'm scared it'll ruin me again. I turned around, my voice lower now. It won't ruin you. Not if it's real. Another silence. But this one didn't hurt. Not in the same way. She stood. Walked to me. Stopped just close enough for her breath to reach my chest. I can't ask you to stay, she whispered. But I'm not ready to ask you to go. The door behind me was still open. But I didn't step through it. Not yet. I came back one last time. Not to chase anything. Not to test the boundary again. Just to see. It had been 2 weeks. The air felt different now. Lighter, maybe? Or maybe I was just less afraid of what we were. She opened the door slowly, like she'd been expecting me, even if she hadn't said it out loud. This time, there was no tension in the hallway. No excuse. No tea. Just her, barefoot again, in a worn sweatshirt, hair pulled up carelessly. She looked tired. But not the kind of tired that came from regret. The kind that came from choosing, finally, to stop running from herself. I told him, she said. I blinked. You told? She nodded. Everything. About us. About what I've been pretending not to need for years. I stepped inside without asking. The door closed behind me with the softest click. He moved out again. She said, voice low but calm. This time, for real. There wasn't even a fight. Just silence. The kind that says more than shouting ever could. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just sat on the couch, pulled her knees to her chest, and looked at me like there was nothing left to hide. I sat beside her. Not close at first. But enough. We stayed quiet for a long time. The kind of silence that finally felt earned. I don't know what this is going to look like, she said. I don't have a plan. I'm not offering promises. I don't want promises, I said. Just something real. She looked down at her hands, then at mine resting on my thigh. Slowly, gently, she reached over and covered it with hers. It was so simple. So human. Her thumb brushed across my knuckles, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since the first day I knocked on her door. I was scared, she said. That I was too late for anything new. That I'd forgotten how to let someone see me. Not the version of me I show everyone. Me. I see you, I said. And I meant it. Every word. Every version. Every fracture. Every attempt to hold herself together. We didn't kiss. Not right then. We just sat there, her hand in mine, bodies close but not pressing. No rush. No pretending. The light shifted through the blinds, painting lines across her living room. Her son's old drawing still hung on the fridge. A bag leaned half-packed near the door. She was staying. So was I. And it wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be. We were choosing it. Slowly. Deliberately. Together.